Hello and welcome back to Grim and Whim. On today's episode, we're going to be looking at a fairly recent case that is incredibly unusual and happened back in 2020, but the verdict was announced in April 2023, and the murderer was officially charged. So in this unusual case and in the story, the players are Anurag Chandra, who is the murderer, and 6 teenagers. And basically what happened is Chandra rammed his car into the car with the teenagers in it, and tragically 3 of those teenagers lost their lives due to this wreck. And the saddest and strangest part of all of this is that this senseless crime was due to an innocent prank.
It's called Ding Dong Ditch, kids ringing doorbells and making a run for it. The prank is even featured in this ad for the Ring doorbell. But now Ding Dong Ditch has turned tragic for these 3 teens. Cops say they did the prank, and the homeowner in Riverside County, California was so furious he pursued them in his car and then intentionally ran them off the road.
So let's dive into the story, and we're going to start by going into who Anurag Chandra is and his charges. Anurag Chandra is a 45-year-old man with Indian origin. I wasn't able to find too much information about his background or profession or family. According to public records, Chandra was previously charged for alleged battery on a cohabitant and child endangerment. And so he was facing these charges prior to this road rage incident that we're going to be discussing today. On January 19th, 2020, in Corona, California, Chandra decided to intentionally drive his car into another car, causing it to crash into a tree and a pole. And inside that other car that he hit were 6 teenagers, and they were driving a Toyota Prius. Like I said before, 3 of the teens in the car tragically lost their lives, and the others were injured but did survive. Following the crash, Chandra fled the scene and left these victims to their fate, and sadly, it meant that 3 of these teenagers lost their lives at a very young age, only 16 years old. A jury ultimately found him guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of attempted murder, and he will spend the rest of his life in jail.
Riverside County man receiving multiple life sentences for the murders of 3 teenagers. The sentencing comes years after a ding-dong ditch prank went horribly wrong. Inland Empire Bureau Chief Robert McMillan has reaction from the victims' families tonight.
After court, family members of the victims spoke out.
I feel that justice was served. I think it would have been nice to have it sooner. I mean, 3.5 years, but who knew that COVID would happen right after?
He's not going to bring back any of our boys. But we feel that justice was served.
But why did he decide to go after these teenagers? I mean, it would take a lot, you would think, to ram someone else's car off the road. I mean, that's incredibly dangerous for obviously this other car, but it's dangerous for your own car. And so what caused this man to go into such a fury where he's willing to risk his own life, risk other people's lives, and drive his car into another car intentionally with the purpose of harming these other people? Well, apparently, these teenagers ding-dong ditched his house, and that made him very mad. And I really wish I was kidding. These boys were seriously injured, and 3 of them died due to ding-dong ditching, which is a really harmless, innocent prank. I've done it before, you know, and the aftermath and, the tragedy that befell these teenagers for just having, stupid kid fun. I mean, it's just stupid fun. If you're not familiar with what ding dong ditching is, like if you're not from the States, or I don't know how it is in other countries, but in America, we do this thing a lot of times, usually when we're younger in our youth, we do this thing where you run up to someone's door and you ring the doorbell, and then the goal is to run away as fast as you can and not get caught. And like I said, it's stupid fun. It's not something that's very serious, and some pranks that people pull can really hurt others, but this is one of those things that, it's just, you do it on a dare or whatever, and it's really harmless at the end of the day. According to the investigators of this case, the teenagers were having a sleepover, and one of them dared the other to either jump into a pool or ding dong ditch one of their neighbors, and they decided to do ding dong ditch. And like I said, it's a stupid prank, but as pranks go, it's relatively harmless, and it's definitely not worth running someone off of the road. And so the boys hopped into their car, drove to a nearby house. One of the boys did the prank, and then they ran back to the car and they drove off. But for whatever reason, Anurag Chandra did not take this prank well and became unhinged. So unhinged, in fact, that he decided to chase after these boys in his Infiniti Q50 and purposely rammed into their car.
1 minute he was having fun with friends. The next, he says, they were run down by a driver bent on road rage. He and 2 others survived, but 3 of his best friends died. NBC4's Robert Kovacic in Corona tonight with a teenager's story about a simple prank that escalated.
I don't know what I'm going to do without them.
Teenage boys killed after playing a prank.
We dared Josh Avasky to either jump into a pool at night or go ding-dong ditch a house.
And so 6 friends piled into Sergio Campusano's Prius.
Rings the doorbell, and then the door opens, and then he runs into the car, and then we just drive away.
They picked the wrong house.
I just saw these brights behind me, and I was like, I realized that he was getting closer and closer, and I was like, this is a huge problem. And that's when one of them was like, oh, shoot, it's the guy that we ding-dong ditched.
Police identified the driver as 42-year-old Anurag Chandra. Sergio says that man behind the wheel of a white Infiniti sedan started by nudging the back of his car, panicking his friends.
My friends started screaming, they're like, make it to the freeway, make it to the freeway, like, try to lose him there.
18-year-old Sergio thought it would be safer to get to a friend's home. They wouldn't make it.
I just saw him ram his car into my back, and I whipped into my window, and I blacked out.
Chandra testified during his trial that the prank made him extremely mad. And he also claimed that he had had 12 beers prior to him hopping into the car. And he said he didn't plan to hurt the teenagers, but he did admit to driving over 90 miles per hour when the speed limit was 40 miles per hour. And he also claimed that he drove away from the scene of the crime because he didn't think that the boys were actually hurt. And I'm going to insert a picture of the crime scene. And as you can see, this car is completely totaled. And it's amazing that, 3 of the 6 teenagers survived and were able to, walk away from the incident. And tragically, 3 did die. And I just don't even believe for 1 second that this man didn't know exactly what he was doing. And when he saw the crash, there's no way he would think that those people inside the car were just going to be fine and walk away like nothing happened. And as you can imagine, the jury was not convinced either. The jury found him guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of attempted murder, and he will spend the rest of his life in prison. And honestly, it's just so incredibly sad. And I hope that he does spend his life in prison with no possibility of parole, because this type of person does not need to be out in the public. Someone who could be so unhinged by a stupid ding-dong ditch prank. It just makes 0 sense. Now that we've gone through the actual crime and the incident that happened, I wanted to spend the remaining time discussing the victims of this horrific tragedy and really focus on these teens, because they were the ones who were impacted by this man's just senseless violence. It's just so incredibly sad that this grown man and his recklessness took away so much from the community and from friends and family members. It's just incredibly sad. And just a quick reminder before I move on to the rest of the story, I do want to just remind people who are listening that these are teenagers, and teenagers are children, and I won't entertain any sort of victim blaming or anything like that. If you wouldn't say it to the victim's face or the victim's, family members' faces, then it probably isn't worth typing it out and posting it. You may have seen one of my previous videos, it was months ago, about the dark side of amusement park rides. And I actually turned off the comment section on that video because I just was really disappointed in a lot of the comments, especially the ones about the teenager who had passed away on one of the rides. He actually had fallen out of this tall tower ride. And you can say whatever you want about me. I'm a full grown adult. But when it comes to victim blaming and just, people sometimes in the comment section of true crime videos, there sometimes tends to be victim blaming or, saying things that you just never know who could see it. It could reach someone who was actually impacted by this tragedy. And I think that is just awful. And it would just make, the whole grief process feel so much longer. And so just be mindful of that if it's not, thoughtful, helpful, intelligent, necessary, and kind, just don't say it, That's the THINK acronym, by the way. So let's start by going over the 6 victims of Chandra's assault. So we first have Daniel Hawkins and Drake Ruiz, and they're both from Corona, California, and Jacob Ivascue, who was from Riverside, California. These 3 were actually killed when Chandra slammed into their car so hard and so fast that it actually crashed into both a tree and then a utility pole in Temescal Valley, which is about 60 miles southeast of downtown Los Angeles. They were only 16 years old. And I want to say now to the family members, friends, and to the community, I'm so sorry for your loss. 16 is far too young to have been ripped away from their lives, which seemed so fun and incredibly happy. We're going to talk a little bit more about, these 6 teenagers at the end, but I just wanted to go ahead and say now that I'm so incredibly sorry for your loss, because it sucks. It's awful and incredibly senseless. The driver of the car is named Sergio Campuzano, and he was 18 at the time of the crash, and he did survive. Also in the car were 2 13-year-olds named Joshua Hawkins and Joshua Ivascue, and they also survived the crash. These kids were all normal, fun-loving, goofy, just kids. They loved the types of things that most kids love, like eating junk food and playing video games and having sleepovers and doing pranks and things like that. And they didn't deserve to be driven off the road by some maniac due to a harmless prank. Daniel, Drake, and Jacob lost their lives in a horrific way, and their community lost valued members who likely would have gone on to do amazing things. There's actually a website that I found, Remember the Three, and it was created to celebrate the teens who lost their lives, as well as to support the community and the family members, friends, supporting them with processing their grief and making sense of this senseless tragedy, and just really coming together and having an outlet to voice, their grief and their hope and their love for these three teenagers. The teenagers' graduating class would have been in 2022. And so scholarships were actually made to honor their lives. And on the site, you can actually see each of their eulogies, as well as so many comments made by family members, friends, community members, people from their church, because these boys were involved in, youth group. And these comments are all voicing their love and remembrance. And the families of these teens are choosing hope. For more information about Daniel, Drake, and Jacob, you can check out the website Remember the Three, and I will link this in the description of the episode. But I do think that this website is a beautiful way to honor these three who lost their lives and just really share the joy and fun.
Hello, this is our new product called Spider Baby. It just came out in stores. Jacob will tell you more.
All right, Spider Baby here helps you with anything you need. Your chores, homework, washing dishes, anything. Just ask it.
Everybody has this cool product. Let's see them right now.
All of our Spider Babies have been rescued from animal shelters in Romania. Save one today for only $34.99.
Save one. Precisely 82.2% of all Americans have a Spider Baby. Get one today.
It's always incredibly tragic when a child loses their life, and the impact on the community where they're from is always difficult. I mean, it's something that is really difficult to process. And this website does do a very good job of honoring their legacy and creating some semblance of hope moving forward, for the families, for, the survivors of the crash, and also their community going forward. And I think that despite this tragedy being so unnecessary and, so incredibly sad, I am happy that there is at least, some effort to remember their lives and celebrate the joy that these friends had. But with all that being said, thank you so much for listening to this story, and I hope that you learned something today. And please do check out the website, Remember the Three. It really is a beautiful, beautiful website, and it's, really cool to see, these three friends when they were alive. And I really do hope that the families of these victims find peace. And I hope that there's no other updates to this case. I hope that Chandra remains in prison for the rest of his life, and that there are no changes to his sentencing, and that he remains where he belongs. And yeah, that's really where this case ends. And I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Thank you so much for joining me. It's goodbye for now, but I hope to haunt you again soon.